In the small dusty village of Omewo, where the wind whispered through ancient trees and children's laughter echoed in the air, Oloedo was a symbol of beauty and grace. Her dark skin, smooth as polished stone, and her radiant smile made her the pride of the village. She was known for her work as a bead maker, crafting intricate jewelry that adorned brides and dancers during ceremonies. But even her artistry couldn't shield her from the storm brewing inside her marriage to Chima. Oloedo had met Chima during a village wrestling match. He had been the star, tall, broad-shouldered, and charismatic. When he laughed, it was like the heavens opened, and when he spoke, every woman in the village hung on his words. Oloedo was no exception. He swept her off her feet, his words laced with promises of a future filled with joy and love. His charm was so magnetic, and his presence so commanding, that even her parents, who were cautious, couldn't refuse when he asked for her hand in marriage. Her mother said, "He is a good man, Oloedo. He will take care of you." The wedding was grand, with the elders blessing them beneath the wide branches of an ancient Iroko tree. The vibrant beats of the drums filled the air as the villagers danced in celebration. But beneath the joy of the celebration, a dark shadow began to take root. It wasn't much, just a forgotten bowl of yam left on the fire. A simple mistake that could have been easily corrected. But to Chima, it was unforgivable. When he stormed into the house that evening, his eyes darkened with anger. Oloedo barely had time to process what was happening. "You cannot even take care of your duties." Chima's voice cut through the silence like a knife. Before she could respond, his hand lashed out with force, striking her across the face. The sound of his palm against her cheek echoed in the small room, louder than the beating of her heart. Oloedo staggered backward, the sting of his slap still burning on her skin. She collapsed to the ground in shock, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Chima stood over her, his chest heaving with fury. "Get up," he shouted, his voice raw with rage. Oloedo didn't move. Her body felt like it had been frozen, but the tears began to flow uncontrollably. The very man who had promised to love and protect her had just struck her down like an enemy. Chima's eyes softened as he looked at her, but it was a cold softness, one that quickly turned into words coated in false tenderness. "I'm sorry, Oloedo," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean it. You know I love you." But the damage was done. The once golden image she had of her husband shattered. She told herself it was a mistake, a single moment of weakness. He had been under stress, she reasoned. He would never do it again. But deep down, she knew she was lying to herself. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Oloedo tried to erase the first slap from her memory, but it was like a scar that wouldn't fade. The tension in their home grew with each passing day. The once affectionate man she had married was now a stranger, unpredictable, volatile and angry. His temper fled at the smallest provocation. If the food was too salty, or if the house wasn't cleaned properly, or if she spoke too loud in his presence, the consequences were always the same: anger, shouting, and eventually, violence. The bruises on her body began to accumulate, but the bruises on her spirit were far worse. She could no longer look in the mirror without seeing the woman she had become, a shell of herself, beaten down and broken. And yet, she stayed. Why? For the children. Kosi, her eldest son, with his bright eyes and budding intelligence, and Ada, her quiet and gentle daughter, who loved to sing as though her voice could chase the storms away. She stayed because she couldn't bear the thought of them growing up without a father. She stayed because she was taught that a woman's duty was to endure. Until, one night Oloedo would never forget. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the compound. Chima returned home late, his breath heavy with the stench of palm wine. He was angry, his mind clouded with drink, and when he saw that dinner wasn't ready, he lost control. "You are useless," he yelled. "Very useless," he shouted. Before she could even apologize, Chima lunged at her, grabbing her by the arms and shaking her violently. Her vision blurred with tears as she begged him to stop. "Chima, please," she cried, "not tonight. Not in front of the children." But he didn't stop. His rage had reached a fever pitch, and he began to strike her with fists that had once held her with tenderness. He hit her in the face, the back, the legs, every part of her body was fair game. She heard the screams of her children. Kosi tried to run to her, but Chima shoved him aside with such force that the boy fell to the floor. Ada screamed for her mother, her voice high and terrified. Through the haze of pain, Oloedo could see their faces, and in that moment, she realized that they were just as broken as she was. They had witnessed their mother, the woman who was supposed to be their protector, crumple under the weight of their father's fury. They were learning that love was pain, that security was a lie. I won't let you destroy them too, Oloedo thought to herself through the haze of pain, her resolve hardening despite the torment. The final blow came when Chima, in his drunken rage, grabbed a pottery pot and slammed it against the wall, shards flying dangerously close to her head. That was when the realization hit her with the force of a thunderclap: she had to leave. She had to escape, for herself and for her children. In the dead of night, while Chima lay in a drunken stupor, Oloedo gathered the children and quietly slipped out of the house. Her hands shook, but her resolve was ironclad. She had no plan, no safety net, but she couldn't stay any longer. Her spirit had been crushed, and there was nothing left to hold on to except the hope that somewhere, somehow, there could be a life beyond the violence. They walked in silence through the winding paths of Omewu, the night air heavy with the smell of dust and palm fronds. With every step she took, she felt as though she was shedding the woman she had been, becoming someone new, someone capable of surviving the unthinkable. By the time the first light of day broke over the horizon, Oloedo had reached her father's compound, a hut far from the prying eyes of the village. Oloedo and her children stood at the doorway of her parents' house, the weight of years pressing on her chest. Her mother gasped, rushing forward, eyes scanning the bruises that had faded but never truly left. "My daughter," her father whispered, voice thick with sorrow and relief. Oloedo exhaled. For the first time in years, she was safe. But the trauma was unbearable. She would lay in the dark, hearing the echo of Chima's voice in her head, remembering the pain he had caused her. There were nights when the weight of it all felt too heavy to bear. But she couldn't let herself break. Not for him, and not for the life he had tried to force upon her. Oloedo's struggle wasn't just physical, it was mental, emotional, and spiritual. Every day, she had to silence the voice in her head that whispered she wasn't worthy of happiness. Every day, she had to remind herself that she was not the woman who had been beaten. She was not the woman who had been silenced. Her children, though broken by the trauma, were her strength. Kosi's first words after the incident were, "Mama, I love you. You are the strongest person I know." And those words, simple, pure, and full of love, kept her going. She worked tirelessly to rebuild their lives, even when the odds seemed impossible. She started making beads again, but now it was for herself, for her freedom, for her dignity. She didn't just survive. She rose. Fate, however, had other plans. One afternoon, as Oloedo set up her stall at the village market, a man approached her. He was tall and dignified, with kind eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. "Good afternoon, Oloedo," he greeted. "Good afternoon," she replied politely, wondering how he knew her name. "I'm Obiora, the new teacher at Omewu Community School," he explained. "I've heard about your beautiful work and wanted to see it for myself." Obiora said, staring at Oloedo with eyes full of love. Oloedo felt a warmth she hadn't experienced in years. But she quickly reminded herself of her resolve. Obiora, however, was patient. He visited her stall often, not to pressure her but simply to be a friend. He listened to her stories without judgment and never pried into her past. Over time, Oloedo began to anticipate Obiora's visits, his presence becoming a quiet solace in her once lonely world. His kindness, gentle and unwavering, soothed the wounds she thought would never heal. Seated at her bead-making stall, she threaded vibrant coral beads with practiced precision. Across from her, Obiora watched, his admiration unspoken but deeply felt. Unlike others, he never pushed, never questioned, he simply listened, offering her the space to exist freely, without expectation or demand. That evening, as the market emptied and the sky deepened into a rich indigo, Obiora lingered. Sensing her hesitation, he spoke softly. "Oloedo, you don't have to tell me anything. But if your heart ever grows heavy, I will always be here to carry the weight with you." Her fingers trembled over the beads. For months, she had locked her past away, fearing that speaking of it would shatter the fragile peace she had found. But something about Obiora, his patience, his unwavering kindness, made her believe that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to bear it alone anymore. Taking a deep breath, she whispered, "I was not always free." Obiora said nothing, only nodding, giving her the space to continue. And so, she did. She spoke of Chima's rage, of nights spent in fear, of the bruises that faded but never truly left her. The words, once suffocating, now flowed with an unexpected ease. By the time she finished, she dared to meet his gaze. But there was no pity in his eyes, only deep, unshakable respect. "You are the strongest woman I have ever met," he said. "And if you let me, I would spend every day proving that love should never hurt." A single tear escaped down Olido's cheek, but for the first time, it was not from pain. It was from hope. And in that quiet moment, under the evening sky, she realized she was falling in love. After months of gentle courtship, Obiora asked Oloedo to marry him. "I know you've been through pain," he said softly. "But I promise to cherish you and your children with all my heart." Tears welled up in Olido's eyes. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe in happiness. Their wedding was a grand celebration under the sacred Iroko tree, a symbol of strength and endurance. Drummers beat there. Talking drums, and dancers in vibrant wrappers performed intricate steps. Oloedo, adorned in regal Igbo attire, radiated joy. As Obiora took her hand, Oloedo felt a weight lift from her heart. She had found a love that was gentle and true, a love that healed rather than harmed. At end, Olido's story became a beacon of hope for women in Omuo. She spoke openly about her past, encouraging others to break free from the chains of abuse. Through her courage, Oloedo not only reclaimed her life but also inspired a new generation of women to seek love that uplifts rather than destroys. And so, under the vast African sky, Olido's laughter echoed once more, a testament to the strength of a woman who had walked through fire and emerged stronger than ever. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, please like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more amazing African tales. See you in the next one.